Hello and welcome back to the FPL Yellow Army channel for another FPL team selection ahead of another FPL deadline. Yes, I'm back and back for a little bit now after some long weeks at uni. I'm back in action, and yes, we did of course activate the wildcard in game week 9, so we're going to talk to you about that, how it went. As you can see there, 97 points. Thank you very much. We'll get to how I did that. And we'll also, of course, preview my transfers and team selection ahead of the Game Week 10 deadline, which at the time of recording is about 33 minutes away. So make sure you lock in those teams, get those transfers made, and, of course, pick those really important captaincy decisions. Make those this week. Obviously, there's a few options to talk about, and we'll get to that, but certainly it's an interesting one ahead of Game Week 10. Obviously, this is the first week where really I look at it and think, there's a lot of points on potential here. Now, that's why a few people are wildcarding Game Week 10. I went a week early, and you know what they say? The early bird catches the worm. So 97 points, lovely stuff. My team is now well set up for the long haul, so I'm feeling pretty good. But we'll talk about whether I make a transfer this week or not. Do make sure you smash a like on this video. Give it a share as well. If you know someone that likes FPL, obviously right now, the Juice Boys, the legends at FPL Juice, they're currently doing an amazing live stream watch along, and it's at the sports bar in Victoria, London. It's Greenwood Sports Bar. So yeah, do make sure you give that a watch ahead of the deadline. Obviously, so many content creators going on that. I'm pretty sure they're not going to be doing any jumping between streams because of that. So nah, I'm not going to be on the Juice this week. But look, still, really shout out to the guys at Juice because they're doing some great content. Currently, we've got Fella, FPL Fella, and James from Planet FPL, talking about Game Week 10 and previewing Fella's team. So, yeah, hopefully, Fella, I back you, mate. You can get that win against KSI in your head-to-head this season. Yes, KSI, the boxer who lost to Tommy Fury in a pretty awful match, in all honesty. Both of them probably should have lost in my view, but that's the way it goes. But look, yeah, it's a really interesting Game Week 10, so let's get into Game Week 9, and we'll of course update you on how things stand in the current mini-league, the FPL Yellow Army mini-league, FPL Yellow Army's Loyal Legion. Also, don't forget that each week on a Thursday upload, we've been doing the podcast. Yes, the Form is Temporary podcast with me and Chris Sebastian, my good mate at uni. Also, producer, legend, Jack Kinch. He has been really, really helpful for the pod. And yeah, he chipped in with his discussion about Wildcard last week on the episode in episode 4. So do make sure you miss, if you past the deadline, do give a little listen to that because there were some great tips in there, lots of laughs and some fun little features in there we had for you. So, advice that will be helpful beyond Game Week 10 deadline. But yeah, Jack was brilliant. And of course, the first week this season, we had a guest on. And I have to say, Ollie Sampson, he had a fantastic week. Ollie Sampson is a good mate of mine as well at uni, and yeah, he's a Chelsea fan, so him and Chris, they're both Chelsea fans. They rose up really, and it almost became a Chelsea pod at one point, but I tried to, keep them, rein down with my Watford, fan bias, and obviously, with Jack, I think he's a Man United fan. I need to check that, but anyway, the point is, ultimately, I look at it and think, this podcast, I set it up thinking, this could be a bit of fun on the side of my uni degree. Let's just see how it goes. But I tell you, thank you so much to the FPL community and, those on X, those on Instagram. The support for the podcast has been absolutely overwhelming. And people like FPL General, people like Chewy FPL, people like FPL Fella retweeting it. I just really appreciate that. So thank you so much. And yeah, we're really enjoying producing the content. So yeah, do give a listen to episode 4 where we talk about how my wildcard got on. Obviously, I'll talk about that in a second. But also, we previewed Game Week 10. Looked at Chris, who looks like he's going to be wildcarding this week. Also, a poll was put out on my Twitter. I say my Twitter, on the podcast Twitter, which you can follow at tfit_pod. And yeah, we had basically a poll where Chris was wildcarding this week. Wasn't sure to go with Haaland or not. And still is a bit up in the air about that. So just get it in the comment section below. What should Chris do? Because we had 2 polls. One was on Twitter, and that poll said that Chris should go with Haaland on the wild card. But then we also had a community poll on Spotify which asked the same question, and that one said to go without Haaland. So at this point, I can imagine with the deadline in about half an hour, Chris is, neither here nor there, a bit confused about what to do. And so, this is ultimately a really tough one for him. Obviously, Haaland has been amazing. But at the same time, it's a lot of budget for 14 million. So it's a big decision to make on wildcard. So yeah, just try and, as much as you can in the comments, very, very ASAP, let Chris know what he should do, and I'll try and get it back to him before the deadline, which is around about half an hour, just under, at the time of recording. So yeah, just make sure you get in the comments as quick as you can. But let's have a little look then, shall we, at game week number 9. Of course, this was the week I went a little bit early with a wild card because I wanted players like Mohamed Salah, you can see there in your picture, like the likes of Ollie Watkins, who's just been a pillar of consistency this season in FPL. And he, with a nice, lovely haul on my birthday as well. That was a nice way to, spend the birthday weekend getting those FPL points. But yeah, there was a few players I really needed. I needed to bin off players like Anana, players who I didn't think were doing that well. And yeah, it just made a lot of sense to me, but not many people did it, and it paid off. A game week rank of 316k with a final point of 97. Well done to the highest points, 152. I mean, that is absolutely outrageous stuff, really. So fair play to you. From the country of Serbia, it was Jelena Junjevic, Gretna FC, bench boosted with the legend Douglas Luiz, who, of course, you might remember in a game week a long time ago was on my bench boost, and yeah, he came in with a goal against Liverpool, and I was loving it. But that was a long time ago, actually only a few seasons ago now. But yeah, unreal stuff from you, fair play. But yeah, still so happy with 97. I mean, there were some people that are around 70, 80 this week, so tonight get 97 on a wild card, I'm absolutely buzzing. Turner 1 pointer, that was a bit frustrating because just leading up towards the deadline, I was like, oh, what am I doing? I don't know what to do. Basically, the goalkeeper situation, I knew that I wanted to spend as little value as possible because FPL this season, there's not been clean sheets, and that's been even more of a turn-off for the likes of, goalkeepers getting FPL points. Talking of turn-off, Turner was in my FPL thoughts just because he had Luton at home in Game Week 9, and I was aware that, Turner obviously not got loads of clean sheets this season, but it was probably on paper one of the best home fixtures you'll get for a chance of a clean sheet. And he had that for a long time. And then those 2 late goals came in for Luton. And yeah, I was kind of gutted because I had looked at, it was all about the game, the Forest match, whether or not it would go ahead, because there was the weather warnings, there was flooding around Lincolnshire, Nottingham area, and there was a chance maybe that it wouldn't have gone ahead, but I was still fairly confident. But I was thinking, well, if the game does get cancelled, I need someone to come in who's got a great fixture. So I had a plan of having Turner starting, but then the backup to be Mark Flecken at Brentford, who of course had that game against Burnley, got the 6 points. So a bit frustrating, to be honest. But, I think going forward, the 2 I've gone with, which is Turner and Areola, they're probably still better long term, especially Areola's fixtures are outrageous. But we went for Areola, on the bench this week because he had a tricky away game to Villa. But yeah, I don't regret going for Turner with that fixture. It was on paper a good decision, just a bit unfortunate the way he conceded those goals late on there. So yeah, look, I look at it and think, long term, I'm pretty nicely set up with Turner. Obviously, fixtures in the next few weeks not great, and that's why I've got Areola though. So yeah, really happy with those 2 cheap keepers. Then Cash, also frustrating. Now look, Matty Cash, he just never comes into my team at the right time. I know he's a fantastic FPL asset, but the problem is that I have is that I always seem to have ways of basically going on him when he never quite gets those attacking returns. I had him gaming 1 at the start of the season, correctly benched him against Newcastle. They conceded 5 and he got -1. So I was like, good foresight there. But then I was like, well, home to Everton, there was rumours of, would he get the minutes, Matty Cash? Because they had so many options in the fullback and the centre-back spots. Like, they had obviously Pau Torres, they had the likes of Konza, they had also brought in Diego Carlos from last season, they had Luca Dean, they had so many options, right? And so Cash wasn't playing brilliantly, in the lead up to the start of that season. Obviously, last season didn't have the best of FPL seasons, Cash. The season where he was really good was the season before that, but it felt like a long time whilst Emery was in charge that Cash wasn't really doing well. So I was doubtful over him, but yeah, I just thought especially with their Europa Conference League involvement, I thought Cash might get some few rests in the league, and I didn't like that, so I took him out in Game Week 2. I know it was a good fixture, but I was hoping that the fixture would still get a clean sheet for the player I brought in for him. It was Rico Henry. So obviously that week Brentford had a game away to Fulham, good chance for a clean sheet. He got that clean sheet, very happy with him. But then of course Everton, I was screaming at the TV, just please score, but their defence, Everton's attack is useless, and so yeah, of course Villa got the clean sheet. So, and I think as well Henry unfortunately got booked against Fulham, so just by the 1 point Cash got more, so that was annoying. But I was like, long term, good decision, I still back it. Brentford defensively are looking quite good in previous seasons, and you know how attacking Rico Henry is. I wasn't so sure about Villa's defence after that first game against Newcastle, some worrying signs. And at Everton, I was like, well, you can get clean sheets, anyone can do that. So going forward, then Burnley was the game for Aston Villa, and it was a Palace home fixture for Brentford. And I was like, well, another home fixture for a nice clean sheet for Rico Henry, that will do. That will be quite nice. I did expect there to be some points for Cash, but oh my days, 17-pointer. He decided to score 2 goals for the first time in his career the week after I sell him. I mean, it was just frustrating so much. And then, of course, Palace scoring that game up at Brentford. And, of course, all players, I start the season with Mark Gay as my little differential. And the one that keeps scoring, get goals, and it's not Mark Gay, it's Joachim Andersen. So frustrating. Wipes out the Henry clean sheet. And, yeah, yet again, Cash just so frustrating. But then, of course, I went all those weeks without Matty Cash, and he actually scored an own goal the week after that. So that made me feel a bit better. But, yeah, he was getting some attack and returns. Then I brought him in for Game Week 9 because I knew that he had that fixture, Game Week 8 I should say, had that fixture against Wolves. And he just, I think, got an attack and return against Brighton. And I was like, this guy has to be in my team, even ahead of the wildcard. Because I was going to wildcard for Game Week 9. I had one free transfer in Game Week 8. And I was like, I have to just bring in Matty Cash, as a week early transfer. He had Wolves away. Now, I knew that Wolves were in good form, but I was just expecting an attack and return. And yet again, we managed to dodge the attack and return this week. He got a 2-pointer against Wolves, and it was on the wild card. He got a 2-pointer again. So, look, I just can't get the luck with Matty Cash. But hopefully, with a nice, juicy home Luton game, this is the week he gets a nice double-digit return. Trippier, 10-pointer. This guy, he was never leaving my wild card because he is just outrageous. I got him in Game Week 7 for that Burnley game. He got a nice return there, and he's just been so good since then. And yeah, I know he's a lot of money to pay, but he's just so much, of a player that you need, and he's just so much better than the other Newcastle defenders. So he has to be in there for me. Lovely 10-pointer in the match against Crystal Palace, which you love to see. And then Burn as well. I went bold with the Newcastle double up in terms of double defence. And yeah, it was a big call because I knew that Palace goal would come in. Like I could just sense it. An Odsonne Edouard header in the 93rd minute, and I would have been fuming. But I really do back the Newcastle defence this season. And Dan Burn actually has shown a bit more attacking threat this season than I did expect. So that's really good to see that Burn's got that attacking upside. But yeah, at the moment, that's my defence. Pretty happy with it, to be honest, going forward. I think it's one of those things. Dan Burn, he's a good bench player if you need to some weeks, but weeks that Newcastle got a great fixture, he's just a really good option. Nice and cheap. Cheaper than Fabian Schär, who, to be fair, did do well for me the weeks before I wildcarded with some bonus points. So, yeah, really happy with that defence at the moment, and long term, I think it's going to be pretty good. The midfield, then. This was my midfield that really had a few differentials in here. Basically to afford the threemium. Yes, I went for the threemium of Son, Salah, Haaland. So Hwang Hee-chan was my first little differential punt. He had a nice fixture, I have to say. That game he had, Hwang Hee-chan, against Bournemouth, I thought it was a chance of an attack and return, and he got that. A lovely little assist, and he just played really well, Hwang. And I went for him over Pedro Neto, who was obviously a bit more owned. People were going on the Neto bandwagon. The thing is, as someone who's Portuguese and watches Neto week in, week out, he is a player who's brilliant, but he can be frustrating at times. He often has a lot of XG and chances, and sometimes is wasteful. And that was exactly the case against Bournemouth. Missed that big chance. And Hwang, yeah, he just played really well again. He's in good form, confident player, and a bit out of position. Really, he's playing as a striker, but classified as a midfielder in the game, and a bit cheaper than Neto. I thought it was worth it, and he matched Neto this week, so pretty happy with that. Maddison, 9-pointer. This guy is just ridiculous. Now, of course, Son, if you have the money for him, he is a really exciting FPL pick. But Maddison is just the one is more important, right, to own, because Maddison is just every week, you know what you're going to get from him. He's the centre of that Spurs attack, and he just does everything. And finally, the wait was long, but the wait is finally lifted with a nice first goal at home in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And it was a good goal at that against Sheffield United. Sheffield United, what am I on about? Fulham, I'm supposed to say. But yeah, look, Son, also 14-pointer. So look, the Spurs boys came in for me clutch. I knew that when Calvin Bassey was, being the centre-back for Fulham, a late injury there to Issa Diop, I was like, these lads are going to cook, and they certainly did. And so, yeah, really happy with that for Son Heung-min. Going forward, obviously, it's a bit more a debate with Son. He's probably not worth the money every single week, but against this Palace side tonight, I'm not looking at selling him because his record against Crystal Palace is ridiculous. In game week 11 against Chelsea, it's probably a sell for Son, but it's a reluctant one, obviously. But it's just when Son is like very streaky, he gets nice hat trick, nice brace versus for a few weeks blanks. So it's hard to justify every single week. But yeah, to have the freemium at the moment does feel really nice ahead of game week 10 especially. Salah, lovely haul. Obviously didn't captain him because of the Gandhi rule. I didn't captain Son because of his X minutes. And to be fair, Son did get subbed off early, so there was logic behind that. But Salah, yeah, look, I didn't go for him because I didn't know how that Merseyside derby was going to go. Notoriously, the games at Merseyside, especially recent years, have been quite tight and quite hard to predict. And obviously it was the early kickoff, so I just didn't fancy it. But of course, that's why I wanted Salah. That's why I wanted to wildcard, because this guy is just an absolute FPL goat. The king comes back and shows off his crown. That's what he does. And yeah, I'm so happy that he's a nice captaincy alternative every week for Erling Haaland, who, to be fair, has dropped off a little bit, but still got the return in game week 9 with a goal against Brighton. That's why I went for him, because it was Brighton. Really, they defensively not looked good this season. So yeah, I still backed the decision with that one, I think, but it was just a shame when Salah and Maddison got a bit more, and also Son. But I think Haaland is still a fantastic player to own. His ownership is still so high, so I just wouldn't go without him. But yeah, I understand the debate with spreading the funds. It's just that if he scores, which is very, very much a possibility, scored a brace in midweek as well in the Europa League. I know it was young boys, but this is Erling Haaland. He's still a man that loves to hoover up the goals. And then, of course, Anthony Gordon, my second differential of the week. He really came in clutch for me with a goal. I saw a few people on Twitter, on X, owning Gordon, the likes of FPL Focal, the likes of FPL Andy, FPL Mode. So look, it was great to see that Gordon goal go in. I was absolutely running around the room when that happened. And yeah, my little differential, I think Gordon was around about 5.6% owned when I bought him, and he's crept up now, I think, to 7 or 8, but still a really good ownership and a really good pick going forward with Newcastle's fixtures. So love you, Anthony. Front two then, Watkins and Haaland, 2 solid picks, pretty template, but it's template for a reason. These are the 2 best strikers in my opinion. Ollie Watkins, 11-pointer, lovely stuff on my birthday. You love to see that. Obviously the cash clean sheet wipeout with Bowen, that jammy goal from Bowen was really frustrating, but I did actually do a little watch along on my FPL Yellow Army channel, so go back and watch that on my birthday if you missed it. Me reacting to the Watkins assist for the Douglas Luiz goal. I could only do the first 25 minutes because I had other plans, but yeah, I quite enjoyed that. So if you want to watch more of those, do let me know in the comments. Bit of feedback. Would you like me to do some FPL watch-alongs in the future? Obviously, it'll be probably easier for me to do those on my phone rather than, I say watch-along, it wasn't live, and I think I need a certain number of subscribers to be a live streaming on YouTube. I have to look into that, but yeah, if you did enjoy it, let me know if it's something you want to see in the future. Obviously, I won't be able to do it every time because I'm a busy man, but I'll see what I can do. But yeah, Watkins, what a goal against West Ham. That was incredible finish, and he scored again in midweek, although he did play 85 minutes in the Europa League, so not exactly ideal stuff there. But you know what, Watkins, that's why he's so good. Such a good form right now for Ollie. And then Erling Haaland, captaincy return, we take that. We don't mind that at all. 2 bonus points as well. The bench, was Areola, Gabriel, Taylor and Mubama. Look, I was actually right once week for the first week in ages. It feels like I was right on my bench. 1-pointers everywhere. That's what you want to see. But they're good fixtures as well going forward for the likes of Gabriel. Maybe even Charlie Taylor. I mean, I'm not going to be starting him most weeks because it's Burnley's defence. But for a nailed 3.9, Lascelles obviously should play this week, but Botman will be back soon. So there's only really Taylor has been a starting fullback at 3.9, and it makes a lot of sense. Mubama's just there to afford the rest of the team. I couldn't quite get to Archer, but yeah, all in all, what a great game week. It was, before game week 9, I was ranked at a rank of 2.3 million, and I've gone up by 1.2 million to 1.1 million in my overall rank. So yeah, really big wild card. Just shows wildcarding at the right time can really have its dividend, pay its dividends. And look, if you just look at my game week history quickly, it has been a painful season before that wildcard. I didn't have a lot of green arrows, but boys, we are back on the up now. 3 green arrows. I reckon this is where the season turns around with that wildcard. Hopefully, you know, with a decent rank now of 1.1 million, we can really get into that top million and push on from there. And hopefully it'll be a good season like last season with that top 18.8k. So let's get into my game week 10 team selection. Before we do that, let's quickly look at the mini league for FPL Yellow Army's Loyal Legion. So of course it's not long to deadline now, 12 minutes. So do lock in those teams as we speak, people. So yes, this is the current mini league standings for FPL Yellow Army's Loyal Legion. I've got to say, fair play to my mate Adam. He's had a decent start to the season, but he said this at this point last season, and then he fell flat on his face, and I was well above him. And you know, so don't count your chickens before they've hatched. But yeah, no, fair play. He started it pretty well, although he doesn't have Haaland, which I still feel is a bit crazy. But anyway, also last week, like he scored well, fair enough, 105. But the week before that, wildcarded, only 64 points. Who gets 64 on a wildcard? That's trash. Nah, talk about 97, mate. Yeah, up front, at the top, I should say, is Saqib. Well done, Saqib. 102 points in game week 9. Incredible stuff. 624 points overall. Also in the top 10, we've got Ellie Pullen, Ashley Valentin, who was top for a lot of the season and has now been dethroned. So yeah, do check out my Instagram and Twitter, at Roberto_Hollis9 on Twitter, and on Instagram it's Roberto_the_pro, all non-caps. Yeah, I've been posting obviously Manager of the Month, and I think Ashley's won obviously in August. He started really well, but yeah, it just shows that some people are doing well, so fair play. Stephen as well, Orbaro. Is it Orbaro? I think. Obviously Adam we've mentioned. Josh Brackstone also doing very well. Fair play, mate. Henrik Burge Solheim as well. Got Spencer O'Leary in there. Who the FPL, I think that is, Wit FPL. And then also in the top 10 we're finishing there, Akshay. So yeah, great start to the season for you guys. Let's have a little look. I'm sorry to do this, people. I've got to name and shame those at the bottom of the league. Now, thanks again, people, for those that have joined the mini league this season. Really do appreciate it. Quite a lot of people in the league this year. It does really make me quite pleased. So, bottom of the league, it's actually my good mate, Theo. He's not started the season very well, and he's not basically made any transfers. That's why he's on 182 points. So it just shows when you don't, play as an active manager, what it can do to your overall points. So yeah, not exactly ideal for Theo there. But let's look ahead, shall we? Actually, I just want to do one more thing. There's a mini league we've got for the pod as well, which unfortunately doesn't seem to be opening any more entry. I don't know how I managed that. I think I somehow managed to lock any more entries out of the league, which is a weird one. But anyway, those that had joined anyway, thank you again, and we'll open up that league, of course. Might actually reset the league to make it new for next season so everyone else can join. But yeah, it's been really fun watching the results, head-to-head league. So last week's results, we can see there, a good win for Stefan. I got my victory against Sylvester. Also, Thanos destroyed Ben. We also had a win for Benjamin against Tosu. George White yet again winning, 71-67 against Joe. Also, Finley beat the average. We had FPL Baskets losing yet again to no FPL. This time we had Chris, my co-host, Chris Sebastian, lost agonisingly by 1 point to Ola Sabami Peter. So look, really feel for Chris there. Then we had FPL Ullen. He got a loss against Danny Agger. 87 points for Basel Aga. And then, of course, Sakar FC, Swagato Sakar, 78 points, but that wasn't enough, and lost against Jamie Burgoyne in there. So you can just quickly see the standings for the Form is Temporary pod, which is also known as the T-Fit pod. This is the current standings, and yes, it's good reading, I've got to say this week, because we are top of the league. Say, we are top of the league. 3 wins from 3, very nice stuff, 180 overall, don't mind that at all. Second is George, who's also had a really good start. And then at the bottom, it's not looking good for the likes of Sylvester, Benjamin and Stefan. But those are my points from Game Week 9 and the mini-league standings. Let's get into my team selection, because at the time recording, there's 8 minutes to deadline. So let's see if there's any more late injury news. I'm looking on Twitter. It doesn't seem to be. But this is the team that we've got lined up for Game Week number... let me just hang on, get the right one up. Sorry about that, people. I just realised I had a different one to open. Here we go. Yeah, this is the lineup then for Game Week number 10. 6:30 deadline, not long to go now. But what's happening? Nothing's happening. Like, it's not looking good. I don't see any team news, which I guess is always good. No news is good news, right? But at the same time, it's a little bit interesting. It's a little bit interesting. We'll have to see what happens in the next few minutes. But in the goalkeeper spot, we've got my guy, Areola. Now, he's coming in for this week because Turner's got away Liverpool. I could see him conceding there 100%. And then on the other side, we've got a nice fixture for Areola against Everton. Now, I know that Everton, they have actually scored some goals recently against Bournemouth. But then again, looking last week against Liverpool, I thought they were pretty poor. So surely, hopefully, a nice West Ham clean sheet this week. I know they played just recently in the Europa League against Olympiacos, but I still feel that's a good chance for a clean sheet for Alphonse. And so, yeah, hopefully the Frenchman can really, deliver the goods. The back line then, we've got back four this week of Gabriel for Arsenal. Gabriel Magalhaes is in there. Now, the redemption arc is there, isn't it? He obviously was on my bench last week. The right decision. I had him Game Week 1. Didn't make the change. Didn't have the Wi-Fi to do it for Saliba. And, of course, he had a stinking start to the season. Saliba got the assist against Forest. Then, of course, he got the clean sheet and the start against Crystal Palace, did Saliba. And Gabriel, yet again, was benched. Then Game Week 3 as well. It was just terrible for Gabriel. So, yeah, look, ultimately, Areola, he's my guy. Gabriel has been a bit of a villain for me in the last few FPL seasons. So, hopefully, that bullet header we've all talked about comes in this game, because Sheffield United, from set pieces to be fair, have been very poor this season, and hopefully it's a good chance of a clean sheet for the Brazilian. Matty Cash at home to Luton. These fixtures are looking pretty tasty, I can't lie, but I set myself up nicely from the wildcard last week for these games. Now Cash, obviously Luton, you'd hope for a clean sheet there. I know they did score 2 against Forest, but I feel like Villa are a bit better of a defence than Nottingham Forest, so fingers crossed, but hopefully as well an attacking return, because that would be really, really nice for Matty Cash. Trippier, Wolves away. Now, Trippier's brilliant, and I expect an attacking return every week. Obviously, it's not going to come every single week, but even if he gets just a clean sheet, again, it's a good fixture against Wolves. On paper, I know Wolves have been better recently, hence I've had the Hwang pick, but I think Trippier could definitely get something in this game. And then Dan Burn, look, I'm doubling up the Newcastle defence. It's bold yet again. I did it last week, I'm doing it again, just because on paper, I know it's a away game, because you don't often see clean sheets away from home all the time, but still, I still feel that's a good enough fixture for me to, have the logic around doing that. And, it's a tricky one, because I know that this will be the moment the Wolves score, and I'll have Hwang on my bench, and I'll think, why, oh why, were you that foolish, when you literally back the, offence that you're playing your defenders against. But I still feel that it's worth it, because Newcastle is not a tricky defence to get past, I think. And Burn has been excellent. And so if I bench Burn, I mean, maybe the more high upside pick is Hwang, but, I don't expect Hwang to score in this game. Maybe in the week after against Sheffield United, where I'll probably keep him. So it's a tricky one. But I'm going for for Burn on the bench, Hwang on the bench. We're just going to... I could have done like one of the two and just maybe hedged my bets a bit. But I actually look at that and think, that wouldn't have quite been the way to go, because really then there's a chance that if Newcastle concede, let's say Trippier doesn't get that attacking return, and then Hwang doesn't score but Wolves score, then I'll be not looking good. Whereas if I start Burn and hope for that Newcastle clean sheet, even if Trippier does concede, then hopefully attack and return for Burn. That gives me a bit of a chance there. So I have to see if that ends up paying off. The midfield then, it's looking like this. Yep, Cala. It's a hybrid between captaincy and Salah. Salah on the captain. Yes, I know it's Salah, and he's let us down sometimes before. I remember last season, right, when everyone was like, "Oh, Salah, this week's got to be the captain," and whenever Haaland exists, still Haaland returns and Salah somehow frustrates. I remember it very well. Everton away last season, I captained Salah last second, and he blanked against Everton. Haaland scored against Villa, and I was just so painful. It was so painful because, of course, Haaland, his ownership is still ridiculous, but it was ridiculous, especially then. So look, at the end of the day, when all said and done, I believe that Salah is the best captaincy this week because Forest, away from home, I know they've been quite good offensively away from home. They've scored against teams like Arsenal and Chelsea, but I still feel defensively they are a bit of a mess when it comes to away games. So I'm hoping Salah does the bits, and he is the king, so why doubt him? I know Haaland is also amazing, but this week it looks like Salah. Son is also there. The game tonight hopefully does well. Palace away, obviously, not the worst of fixtures, and Son's record against Crystal Palace is fantastic. Then Maddison, he's got a nice juicy fixture this week against Crystal Palace. Now I look at it and think Maddison beyond this week is going to be one I want to keep, but I don't think I'll do the captaincy on Son because, look, at the end of the day, it's the early fixture, and I know that it's not the early Saturday 12:30, which is why we sometimes say the Gandhi rule, but it's still a bit risky. Palace obviously have had some defensive impressiveness this season, and I still feel Spurs will score a few there, but I would just not prefer that over Salah, really. Maddison is just so good, so yeah, I love him at the moment. And then Gordon, he is in there with the nice fixture against Wolves. I know Wolves have been quite good this season at times, but I still feel there's weaknesses there defensively, so hopefully Gordon can follow up his goal last week with another this week. Then the front two we've gone for, it's Ollie Watkins and Erling Haaland. Yes, vice captaincy is on Watkins. Now, I'm aware Haaland could explode against Man United because we know how bad United have been this season, but I just don't know. I don't fancy the captaincy on Haaland this week. It could pay, make me pay there, but I just feel that Salah at home to Forest is just so good of an option. Now, Watkins, of course, at home to Luton's a good option for captaincy, but he did just play 85 minutes in the Europa League, and I know that Luton are, on paper, probably the worst defence, one of them in the league, along with maybe Sheffield United and Burnley, but Luton, I know they find ways to just not concede loads and loads of goals. Obviously, only one against Spurs, but they do keep conceding, so it's tempting. I can't lie, it's tempting. But I'm going for Salah this week with the extra point for a midfielder and a clean sheet, etc. But Watkins looked great for this week. Hopefully, he'll carry on that good scoring run. And then Haaland, Man United, that's a game I could see Haaland doing well in, so I'm still going to own him. And Man United defence is just, as I said, shambolic. Now, in the bench, we've got Turner, Liverpool away, tricky fixture. Hwang Hee-chan, hopefully he doesn't return. I mean, obviously, I got his points last week, so at least I got his returns as a differential. If he scores this week, everyone's going to get him ahead of Sheffield United, but hopefully he won't. Hopefully he'll have a quiet game and he goes under the radar ahead of game week number 11. Taylor away to Bournemouth. Now, actually, I could see a clean sheet there for Burnley, but it is Burnley, so I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if Taylor conceded, and it's Burnley, so I'm just not going to start him over any of my other players. And then Mubama doesn't obviously play, but he's just in there to afford the team. So yeah, nothing in the bank. Transfers this week, not making them, because as I said, I'm benching Hwang, starting Gordon, rolling the transfer. That's why I set up the wildcard as I did, because I knew that I'd like to roll this week, really. It's not a lot to do. Obviously, I'd love Saka, I'd love Mitoma. I thought about that, but I'd look at it and think, like, it's just too much surgery, too much of a -4, -8, doesn't make it worth it. But by game week 12, I'll definitely try and get Saka ahead of that game at home to Burnley. So yeah, those are my team selection dilemmas. Captaincy is pretty much locked, and that is my team lineup for this game week. So I hope you have enjoyed. Smash a like on the video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.